Oh, there you are, YouTube. Doodle 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 do. Subscribe if you're interested, but also no pressure. Hey, my nose itches. Okay, so I just watched this documentary called Brats. Not about those dolls. No, not about the dolls. This was about the Brat Pack from the 80s, and it was directed by Andrew McCarthy, a member of the Brat Pack. I feel like not a lot of people think of him though as a member of the Brat Pack, because when I think of the Brat Pack, now me, I am an elder millennial. Uh, I feel like the instinctual thought when thinking of the Brat Pack, it is typically the Breakfast Club. But the Breakfast Club here is not the Brat Pack film, because the actual Brat Pack film is St. Elmo's Fire. And that is when that article was written about them, when that term was coined. And I'm trying to remember the name of the person who wrote the article. Bloom. I'm going to say David Bloom. I'm probably wrong with the first name. Something Bloom. Gosh, what was his name? It just left my brain. But anyway, he was the one that wrote the article coining the term the Brat Pack, and doing so referring to this cast right here. It was originally supposed to be sort of an article focused on our man Emilio Estevez over here, but then it sort of expanded. Emilio got close to this person, but not in a way in which he thought he was friendly with him. But the journalist was doing his job. Sort of that thing, like you go to a strip club or something like that. It's like, oh, she likes me. It's like, she likes the dollars you're putting in her, a little thong there. So it was one of those situations. So he's like, hey, man, come party with us. And he's getting to know the Brat Pack, right? Or these individuals, and goes ahead and writes his article. And, it's a mixture of things. It's him feeling like he's being honest based on what he observed. It's him also trying to be funny and doing so in somewhat of a scathing way, scathing being the words of Andrew McCarthy. And also trying to make a career for himself. There's a lot of different things going on in that article. And it comes out, and these professionals here who are sort of working in this time where a lot of movies about young people are coming out, and they're taking their jobs very seriously, but at the same time they are young, so they're taking it seriously, but maybe other people aren't taking them seriously, or maybe they are at this time, but then that article comes out and sort of switches the thought about these actors. So it's like, wow, look at this, these young actors, they're so talented, look at what they're doing. And then this article comes out, and then it's like, look at these like selfish, fame hungry, I can't remember the term that was used, but greedy is not the right word, but basically look at these entitled kids here who are famous, right, and sort of chasing fame, and that's not really what they were after. A lot of them, seemed like almost the majority of them, were all very interested in their craft, and it just so happened they were at a young age, but then they get caught off guard on this one night of partying. Everybody is doing that around their age, and they are being misjudged as party animals who have no true interest in the craft. They're just into the idea of getting famous. And that article just sort of shifts everything and creates this perception about them outside of what they are aiming for, which is being treated as serious actors. And that's what this documentary is about. It's all about Andrew McCarthy sort of going back and looking at this and being like, what did this thing hurt my career? Did it shift the direction of my career? Have you ever seen the movie High Fidelity, starring John Cusack, who's sort of a Brat Pack adjacent type? And that's mentioned, the adjacent Brat Packers like Leah Thompson and Michael J. Fox, sort of like also in teen movies at this time, but not in these movies, or Pretty in Pink, or 16 Candles, because Pretty in Pink, John Cryer was also mentioned in the documentary. He was interviewed. Now, he was not in either of these films, but he was in Pretty in Pink, right? He was also in some great movie where he was like a fugitive on the run for, I think, a crime that he didn't commit or something, where he had a beard at the beginning of the movie and then he had to shave it and dye his hair and like pretend that he was a high school kid or something. I can't remember that movie, but I remember watching that when I was a kid and I really loved that film. But anyway, Leah Thompson was also interviewed for the film, also as was Timothy Hutton, who Andrew McCarthy sort of credits as the godfather of the Brat Pack. Right here, this is Timothy Hutton in Ordinary People, which came out in 1980, and he sort of called him the godfather because this was sort of the first film that a young actor was being looked at in a very serious manner, because Timothy Hutton was nominated for Best Supporting Actor here, even though he was kind of the lead, and won the Oscar, right? And then that sort of like pivoted Hollywood to sort of look at these younger actors as serious actors and starting giving them roles, these very serious roles. I mean, look at Breakfast Club. Sure, it's about high school students, but they're treated in a very sincere manner, which I think is great. Like, it's not a silly movie, you know? When you look at the 90s high school movies, a lot of them are very silly or have somewhat of a goofiness to them or an artificial quality to them. Here, we're going for almost an ultra realism, almost like over the top, right? Because I wasn't this mature when I was in high school, but these people all seem very mature. Same thing with St. Elmo's Fire here. We're dealing with very adult subject matter with these people who are just on the cusp of becoming adults. They're finding their careers and things like that. Very good movie. Both of these, very good movies. And Andrew McCarthy sort of credits this as sort of the thing that did it. And Timothy Hutton is also interviewed in this. You may also know Timothy Hutton from Taps. He's in Taps with some other Brat Pack adjacent movies, because that was a question that was asked. Is Fast Times at Ridgemont High a Brat Pack film? Is it? Because if it is, then everybody in that film, including our buddy Sean Penn here, and who else? Anthony Edwards, and who else was in that movie? You know, people like their names I can't think of right now are in that movie. And then the question is Tom Cruise a part of the Brat Pack, or is he another one of those adjacent types? Here he is in Taps. He's also in Risky Business. He's in a movie with Leah Thompson where he's a coal miner, and I can't remember what that one's called, even though I just watched it maybe last year or the year or two ago. You know, what is this? Like, he was definitely a young actor at that time, but how many people are we tossing into this Brat Pack community? Is it just the St. Elmo's Fires, or are we extending it to those in the Breakfast Club as well? Because honestly, when someone says Brat Pack, who pops into my head? Maybe the movie St. Elmo's Fire pops into my head first, but I think Molly Ringwald is the face I see first. And Molly Ringwald is not in St. Elmo's Fire. Molly Ringwald is in The Breakfast Club. She is in 16 Candles. She is in Pretty in Pink, right? So we have these movies, and you know, she's a redhead. You know, I feel like that's kind of rare in cinema, seeing that. And she's just a great actress all around. But she's maybe who I think of first, even though she's not in the film that sort of helped to coin that term, which is very interesting. And you know, also the person who directed this documentary, McCarthy, is not in Breakfast Club, but I think a lot of people, when you hear Brat Pack, you go, you think of Breakfast Club first. But we do have people who are in the Breakfast Club that were also in St. Elmo's Fire. People like Emilio Estevez, Ali Sheedy, Judd Nelson. But these two here, Michael Anthony Hall, I never remember. Anthony Michael Hall right here. Is he a Brat Pack member? You know, we know him from 16 Candles as well, and that movie gets lumped in, right? So maybe he is. He's very young here. He's younger than everybody else, or at least he seems that way because of his smaller stature. And then we also have, gosh, why did the name Molly Ringwald right here? Molly Ringwald, and I in a lot of ways she seems like she is the focus of the or the face of the Brat Pack in a lot of ways, right? But that article sort of painted Emilio Estevez as. But here's something I kind of wanted to get to. Let's see. I'm going to look over here. I got something I want to grab. A, B, C, D, Q, R, S. Where are LM? Okay, so I need to go down here to my movie collection for a second, because I got more to say. Because some of these actors, they're sort of feeling like this Brat Pack label sort of limited their careers. But I'm thinking here as a millennial elder, and maybe some of them I do sort of lump them into Brat Pack and only think of them as that. And Molly Ringwald is one of those people, because I don't think of her in really any. And I don't know if this is mean. I don't mean it to be mean. It might feel that way, but this is just like my honest perception. When I think of her, I really only think of those films when I think of her. But other people, like Tom Cruise, I mean, he's adjacent. But if we think about him, are you thinking of his Brat Pack movies, or are you thinking of, Mission Impossible? I guess Top Gun, the first one, kind of maybe Brat Packish. Anthony Edwards is in it, and he's also in Fast Times, but is Fast Times a Brat Pack movie? You have all these questions, but I think some of them. Also, interesting thing I'll note while watching that documentary, he also talked about Demi Moore, who I'll get to in a moment here, but Mayor Winningham, not mentioned once, not even once in the documentary. Her name was never spoken. I'm trying to even remember if we saw her picture, probably in like a poster or something of St. Elmo's Fire, or a little clip or something, because those were shown, some Brat Pack films. But Mayor Winningham, it's like she's not holding this label at all, because not even in the movie did they mention that. But here, this is kind of what I want to get to, is people who have, I think, gone beyond Brat Pack, sort of limiting who they are. Maybe, and where I think it's just something within them, and maybe it's something within them and their own generation, maybe thinks of them as, hey, they are Brat Packers, where the younger generation doesn't necessarily see them that way, because they have reinvented themselves, right? So that's kind of what I want to get into. Let's start with, let's Mayor Winningham. I don't know. She's done so many other things, and there is something about her, and probably because we don't think of her in any of those other films that were going on at the time. She's, in this one, but it's not like she's, doing Pretty in Pink and 16 Candles and Breakfast Club and things like that. So I think for her, that does kind of separate her from that term, right? And not a lot of people know this movie the same way that they know The Breakfast Club. So I feel like that label may not attach to her so much from someone from my generation, elder millennial, because these people are all my parents' age. And let's go to Demi Moore. Now, I feel like she's completely reinvented herself. I don't really necessarily think of her as a Brat Packer. And as my wife and I were, as we were watching this, she's like, "Oh, Demi Moore's in it." And I was like, "Yeah, everybody in St. Elmo's Fire is in it." And I don't think she's seen St. Elmo's Fire, so she didn't know that. When she thinks of the Brat Pack, she thinks of this crew. But you have like G.I. Jane. You have she really knows her from Now and Then. We also have You Can't Handle the Truth with Tom Cruise, adjacent. That movie, why can't I come up with the title right? You Can't Handle the Truth. You know what I'm talking about? A Few Good Men. There we go. Striptease. Her whole thing with Ashton Kutcher, right? Her whole thing with Bruce Willis. I think all of that sort of separates her, takes her away from the label of Brat Pack, right? Let's get into Ali Sheedy. Maybe so. She's in this and she's in this. So I feel like that's sort of her label. I also think of her as being in Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. That's New York, sir. So there we have the John Hughes connection with this. So I maybe do think of her as Brat Packy. So there's that. Let's move on to McCarthy here, the director of the documentary. So sure, he's in this. He's also in Pretty in Pink. But how many people are like thinking Brat Pack, Andrew McCarthy. The thing is, he's not in Breakfast Club, and again, my generation, I think most of us, when we think of Brat Pack, we think of those in the Breakfast Club. So for me, when I'm thinking of Andrew McCarthy, I think he has completely reinvented himself. And when people are thinking of Andrew McCarthy, I don't think they're thinking Brat Pack. I think they're thinking Weekend at Bernie's, right? Am I right? I think we're all sitting there thinking about Weekend at Bernie's when we're thinking about Andrew McCarthy. He didn't mention this at all. He didn't talk about how maybe it reinvented his career or maybe stripped away the Brat Pack role. Maybe he sees it as an extension of the Brat Pack sort of label that he has, but I don't. This is what I think of when I think of Andrew McCarthy, are these two films right here, this genius film here and this silly film here. So I see a reinvention of an actor, maybe feeling like he's been labeled, but then hopping off of that label. But I understand if it's happening to you in the moment and you don't know what this little kid in Illinois is thinking and seeing something completely different than maybe what my parents were seeing. I'm looking at you in a completely different light than what my parents were. Maybe my parents were also like, okay, these are the Brat Pack members. I want to be one of them. I'm the same age as one of them. I'm going to see them as that forever, but I don't. When I see him, and maybe he doesn't want this, I see him as that hilarious, great personality in Weekend at Bernie's. Absolutely genius work by him. In my opinion, I think he is great in it. Very comedic, smart, fast, quick, great. Okay, so also look at this. They didn't want you to forget that Andie MacDowell was in this. So how often are you watching this movie and thinking Andie MacDowell, or how often are you looking at Andie MacDowell and thinking Brat Pack and Brat Pack? I know I'm not. When I'm thinking of her, I'm thinking of Groundhog Day, right? I'm out here thinking of Groundhog Day. Okay, so we've moved on to him, and then we have. So what was the year on this? 85, I think. When did Repo Man come out? Because here we have Emilio Estevez here, and I feel like he kind of seemed very bothered by the fact that he was a Brat Packer and didn't want to be associated with it at all, which I guess sort of worked for him because I don't. Which is, I mean, I guess I do because he's in this, but I don't see him pigeonholed, right? I don't see him as being backed into a corner or stereotyped as only these two films right here, because he is in the movie that coined, or, you know, the movie that the article was about that coined the Brat Pack, and the article was originally supposed to be about him, sort of the leader of the Brat Pack, and he also is in The Breakfast Club, which actually came out before this movie, if I remember correctly. I think this movie came out first and then this one, but same year. And oddly, he's in both, but I feel like he has Repo Man, which sort of gives him this great sort of punk, indie, gritty fandom, and he's also in, you know, like Maximum Overdrive, which gives him this, you know, Stephen King fandom thing happening over here. But then he is also in again, this is my generation seeing him, where he's completely reinvented himself, and that is in the Mighty Ducks films. And maybe he didn't want to be seen as like a family man, a man or an actor who makes family sweet comedies for Disney, but it is a reinvention, and it is showing a broadening of what he is capable of. So maybe, sure, it was difficult to find other roles in Hollywood. He wasn't getting the roles, but when it came to the general public, at least my generation, I didn't see him as somebody who is only a Brat Pack member. Like my mom, you know, when she's watching these movies with me when I'm a child, she's of course thinking and talking about The Breakfast Club. That's one of her favorite movies. She's talking about St. Elmo's Fire, another one of her favorite movies. But to me, this is where my mind is at when I am seeing Emilio Estevez, and maybe Men at Work also. And oh gosh, and Loaded Weapon, man, that movie's funny. And he's doing all these great things, but I don't know, maybe he wanted to be doing other things, right? And that's something they did mention in the documentary. Andrew McCarthy and Emilio Estevez were talking, and they're talking about, like, you know, I think, you know, Steven Spielberg Martin Scorsese, they're not going to call up a Brat Pack member and ask one of us to be in one of their movies because we were labeled this thing. We're kind of seen as kids, and then we are eternally teenagers. And I guess I kind of understand that, eternally teenagers. I kind of feel that way a little bit with Michael J. Fox a little bit. Because Back to the Future, one of my favorite movies, and I've watched it over and over and over and over and over again. And like that's sort of like my mental picture of him. And also, you know, I grew up watching Family Ties on occasion and Teen Wolf, and I didn't really get into Spin City very much, right? So I don't think of him necessarily as an adult actor. I think of him always with his teenage stuff. So I guess I do understand it from that point. But here he's older, and I'm thinking of him as an adult, not a high school kid or anything like that. And honestly, even St. Elmo's Fire, I'm not thinking of any of these people as high school kids. I'm thinking of them as adults. They seem very adult in this film. And even their personalities here, much more mature than mine was. They feel very mature in this film. So, where are we at? Now we're at Judd Nelson. So, Judd Nelson, sorry. With him, I am thinking of him solely as a Brat Pack member. He has that, you know, the famous fist in the air. He's in the Breakfast Club. He's in St. Elmo's Fire. He's in the movie Steel as the bad guy. So Steel is like about it. When I'm thinking of him, I'm thinking of this, and I'm thinking of Breakfast Club, and I'm thinking of Steel. So sorry to Judd Nelson, but yes, when I I think of you as a Brat Packer. And then we have Rob Lowe over here. So Rob Lowe, Brat Packer, and he was interesting in the documentary because he totally like accepted it, sort of loved it, and realized the potential in it, and the good that came out of it, and maybe it did help their career, maybe it did hurt their career. I know he's talked about his good looks hurting his career, and I do agree with him on that. So, oh yeah, and he's in that movie Youngbloods also, with Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves, you know, I don't think of as someone who would be Brat Pack adjacent, interestingly. But he, you know, you don't see him in photographs with these people or anything, even though he's kind of the same age as all of them. But yeah, Rob Lowe, you know, I don't think of him as a Brat Packer. I think of him as more like in the movie Tommy Boy, honestly. And then I know he was in Parks and Rec, but I didn't watch that. Gosh, what else do I know him from? I can't even think. Like Wayne's World. I know him from Austin Powers. So to me, I'm thinking of him in more like these 90s things. But I remember watching Tommy Boy with my stepmom, and she goes, "Is that Rob Lowe?" And that was like the first time I really like clocked his name and remembered it forever, was when she said that. And then she said, you know, told me I was in St. Elmo's Fire, which at that time I hadn't seen yet. So maybe I had. Had I seen it? No, I don't think I'd seen it by then. So to me, I don't think of Rob Lowe as a Brat Packer, even though he was very much there. And obviously that article was written at a time when this was, you know, getting ready to come out, or maybe it had just come out. I can't remember right now. But I don't think of him as a Brat Packer. So, again, interestingly, Molly Ringwald I do think of as a Brat Packer. I guess by default I think of Anthony Michael Hall as a Brat Packer because of this film, and also 16 Candles, so that's just going to happen. I think he has reinvented himself pretty well, especially when you look at things like Edward Scissorhands, because he's bulkier there. He seems he's grown. He's stronger. Also, I think of him in Vacation, you know, so I feel like he had an identity before this movie. But yeah, in Edward Scissorhands, he's playing a bad guy, you know, and he kind of escapes that nerdiness that he'd been holding on to in those other films. So that was a reinvention. And then what we see him in one of the recent Halloween movies, and you know, he's done a lot of stuff between then that just totally takes him out of being Brat Pack. It's like he's an example where it's like, yeah, I think of him as Brat Pack, but I also, you know, think of him beyond it and as a reinvented person. And some other people, let's go over some other of the like adjacent ones. You know, you have people like Robert Downey Jr. I mean, you know, he's sort of Brat Pack adjacent, but then we have, you know, he just won an Oscar, you know, and he has everything that he's done with Iron Man and the MCU and stuff like that, right? And then some more adjacents, you know, might be, I think I already mentioned John Cusack, and you know he's had such a great career. I think my mom was really in love with him. I think out of all of them, he's probably her favorite. But again, he is adjacent. So yeah, you have all sorts of these different people that are involved. John Cryer, I think I mentioned him. He's sort of seen as adjacent, and you know he was like, am I even really a part of this or not, you know? And I think he said, was it him, maybe it was Leah Thompson, said they wish they were a part of it. You know, it was like Leah Thompson was kind of like, yeah, you know, I just kind of wish I was a part of the group. Like I realized I was making movies at that time and I just kind of wanted to be labeled that with you because you all seem like the cool people and I wanted to hang out with you. And Andrew McCarthy was like, we weren't hanging out, you know. Most, like, I think it was maybe he even said this about Emilio, that he hadn't seen him since the premiere of St. Elmo's Fire. The premiere of St. Elmo's Fire. I mean, that was forever ago. And, you know, she, in the business, even had this idea that they were all hanging out, they were buddies, all of this stuff, but that really wasn't the case. That really wasn't the case. And Emilio even he admitted this and, you know, sort of apologized in a way to Andrew McCarthy, talking about how there was a movie that Andrew was up for and Emilio, I think, was already cast, and Emilio was like, you can't hire him because he didn't want to be associated with this Brat Pack term. He didn't want to make one more movie with more Brat Pack people. So Andrew missed out on that opportunity. They knew they wanted Emilio, and Emilio was like, I'm not going to do more Brat Pack movies. So Andrew lost out on that, and that was kind of an emotional moment. This is a really great documentary, Brats, but it is interesting. Rob Lowe seemed the most like Andrew. Come on, look at how cool this is. You gotta accept it, and you gotta understand how awesome this is, that we are a part of this history. It was like old Hollywood was ending and we were beginning. Out with the Rat Pack, in with the Brat Pack. Sure, we were young, but I don't know. I don't think he seems affected. Maybe he didn't have the same sort of aspirations that a lot of the other ones did in terms of acting. I mean, he kind of was like a Hollywood guy. It seemed like, and they did kind of mention that, you know, like Andrew McCarthy was like, I was the New York actor, serious actor, and Rob Lowe was like this cool LA guy. So maybe that's the difference there, right? But I thought he had a really great attitude about it, and I also think Demi did, but Demi I feel like really did escape the term, and a lot of people don't think of her because most people think of this crew. So I think she escaped it, and she had a lot of other things going on in her life that it didn't really like hold her down in any sort of way. And I feel like the negative that she was sort of talking about was almost more in an effort to sort of humor him. And there were a lot of people he didn't get to talk to. So Mary Winningham, again, who was not even mentioned in the documentary. I want her name mentioned. I want to know what the thought is. Like, why wasn't she mentioned? I want to know that. So she was not mentioned. We did get an interview with Demi. We did get one with Allie. We did get one with Rob. We did not get one with Judd. We did get one with Emilio. So actually we got everybody except Judd and Mare. Mare was not even mentioned. Judd was mentioned a lot. We did not get one with Molly. He was trying to get one with her, but she kind of seemed like she did not want to do it. Anthony Michael Hall, I don't think he was even mentioned, interestingly. Gosh, who else? Timothy Hutton, like I said, was interviewed, as was Leah Thompson. Nothing from Tom Cruise. His name was dropped, but it was kind of like is he a part of it? Same thing with Sean Penn. Is he a part of it? Anthony Edwards, Robert California from The Office, whose name has escaped me right now. Gosh, what is it? You know him from, you know, movies like Crash and stuff like that. Not Crash, the Oscar winner, but the other one. You know, is he a part of it? You know, you have all these names that were swirling around. Are they a part of it? All these adjacents, right? You know, which I think would be interesting. Crier, he got him. That was interesting because he was kind of like, but am I even in it? Um, you know, and that's cool. Those outsiders. You know, Robert Downey Jr. I'd love to see him interviewed. I'd love to see John Cusack interviewed. Sort of these adjacents, Michael J. Fox. You know, all of that. But here's the interesting thing. Like I said, we did not get an interview with Mayer, and we did not get one with Judd, but we kept seeing sort of like the can we get Judd? Can we get Judd? He's calling these numbers, right? He's calling these numbers, trying to get in contact with these people that he hadn't talked to in like 30 years or so. And then the movie's ending, and it's like, ah, man, it was great movie, but I wish he could have gotten more interviews. So there's a little bit of a letdown that he didn't get all the interviews, right? But guess how? I'm going to spoil something for you. I'm going to spoil the ending here for you. So here's the thing. You're thinking, great documentary. I really love this. This was a wonderful insight to the inner workings, not the inner workings, but like the inside, what the Brat Packers feel, and then other people. He was getting like social scientists and maybe not social scientists, social writers and stuff. And he did get the writer of the article on there too, to even talk. That was an interesting conversation as well. And Andrew McCarthy didn't necessarily feel, I think, fully satisfied with the way the writer spoke about it, because he was like, would you have done anything different? Do you feel like you were mean? Do you feel like after the interview was over, it was like, he's like, you know what, I didn't get enough of this guy. I need to ask him these harder questions. Not harder, but more blunt questions without leaving him room to dance around. But anyway, I'm going to give away something here, the ending, that leads to the possibility. Let me just tell you what happened. So the movie's ending, and then we hear this phone call. We hear a phone ring. And then we see Andrew McCarthy. I think he's on a dock of a lake or something like that. I can't remember. I just watched the movie, 32 minutes ago. And he picks up the phone and he goes, Judd? And then the movie ends. And then it's like, oh, we getting a sequel. We're getting a sequel. We're getting a Brats 2. Brats documentary part 2. I haven't heard anything about it. I don't know if it's actually official or if it's going to happen or anything like that. But his Judd Nelson picked up the phone and called Andrew McCarthy. So it's possible we will get a Brats 2, because this man right here phoned this man right here. And I hope it happens. I'd love to hear more from the periphery members, those adjacent members. I'd love to hear something about Mayor Winningham. I think she's older than everybody else, so maybe that's part of the reason. But I don't know. I think this was a cool documentary. Shout out to my buddy Cody over at Dude Who Loves Movies, who informed me about this documentary. I think it was great. I actually don't even know if he's seen it yet. But hey, everybody, I think if you're interested in those 80s teen movies, those Brat Pack films, or these actors with their more current careers, you may like this, to have a look back about it. Like, I feel an interesting sense of nostalgia for this time, because it's stuff that I think of, like when I think of my mom as being young, questions that I was asking her when I was really young, when we were watching these movies. Tell me more about it. Tell me more about it. And she didn't experience a lot of this stuff, right? She sort of lived vicariously through these people in a way, because she got married very young, at 17, in high school, and had me at 20. So a lot of this life that they're living, she couldn't live, right? Because she had all these responsibilities. Wife, mother, all of this stuff was going on while these people were partying, living it up, making movies and stuff like that. And making movies about all these like youthful opportunities. The world is ahead of you, where my mom's world was in the right now, because of you know, the path she had taken right there, right? Like she was in it, you know, being married and having kids. So you know, I'd ask her these questions, like another movie, sort of from this time, The Lost Boys, you know, Jason Patrick, adjacent, is he there, is he not, you know, that sort of thing. Um, you know, I'm just like thinking about these movies, and I have a unique nostalgia about them, like talking with my mom about them, you know, because I was very young during this time. 85, I would have been like two, you know, a 2 or 1 at this time. So, and my mom was watching these movies and not living the lives that she was seeing in these movies. So it's sort of a vicarious thing, um, which is interesting. I don't know. I think all that's interesting. It was very good documentary. I think you should check it out. And I hope there's a part 2. What did you think of the documentary? If you saw it, what did you think of Brats? I'd love to know. What are your favorite Brat Pack films? I want to know that too. Mine, I mean, I'm kind of basic, but it's probably these two right here. I probably like Breakfast Club most, and then I'm going to go St. Elmo's Fire afterwards. You know, Weird Science was cool. Um, Gosh, what else? You know, Pretty in Pink's fine, 16 Candles is fine, but I don't know. These two are my favorite, with Breakfast Club at number 1. I was really wanting to watch it as I was watching the documentary. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let me know all those things I said in the comments below, and perhaps we'll see you tomorrow for more Pure Hangout.